roles of a family, and each person was designated to a certain role. In my dialogue, I was a 50-year-old grandmother who was married to a disabled husband whose daughter had gone to jail, and so I was now taking care of my two young grandchildren. I feel like my group achieved dialogue because we were forced to communicate with each other in order to technically survive, and because we were taking on the actual roles of these people, me and my husband per se had to be the more active voices in guiding our group, where the two other members of our group took on the roles of being children and did so accordingly. In my group, I was responsible for working, bringing home money, and kind of almost taking care of everything because my husband was disabled and actually was not able to go anywhere without himself, and so it was my job to work for full time as well as make sure our kids were okay, and then it was available for me to take my husband to run errands, but only if he was with me, which usually didn't happen because we couldn't leave our children at home because we couldn't be like caught for neglect. So I was basically responsible for keeping our family going and moving, and so making sure I was paying the maintenance bills and repairing our household, getting food and clothing, cashing his disability checks as well as my paycheck each week, and we were also required to have passes for whenever we were traveling. And so the one thing I found is just that there was not ever enough time in the day for everything that I needed to take place, which was we had 4 15-minute weeks making up a month, and so we started below the poverty line where we were not able to pay all of our bills, and eventually we were left with only paying for food. But we were one of the few people that didn't get evicted from our household. We were never arrested, and so it just taught me a lot about the real struggles of people, just because I've never even had a job, let alone had to work for myself. I'm doing my new student dialogue. So that was something that I just found really interesting. Something that surprised me was just the amount of time that it took to run all the errands, and something that I had never had to deal with is just not being able to afford my everyday needs such as food and clothing for my children. And I'd never experienced that just because I come from a privileged family where I never had to worry about stuff like that. As far as our interaction with the other participants, we relied a lot on our neighbor per se, and we helped each other out with babysitting and running errands where we could kind of kill two birds with one stone. And so without that, I feel like we couldn't have survived. And so we were with the two families at the end of our certain group that actually were better off than we started before, and we were still living in our houses and we're not still owing bills. As far as the experience as a whole, I feel like I learned a lot about the area around Clemson, as well as the struggles that everyone else in the world faces with living below the poverty line. And I feel like I have a better understanding of what the government does to try to help those in need. And so now I definitely want to get involved around the community and help out any way I can, whether it's with mentoring or food or calculating taxes, which one of our instructors said for free for those who are underprivileged that can't afford to do things like that, but it's a very important aspect of their life. So overall, I would say that the new student dialogue was a success, and I really feel like I gained a lot from the experience.